Rupy's Break from Reality, where you find me in Hiroshima. Most of you will have heard of Hiroshima, either because of the G7 conference that's currently going on and is scuppering a lot of my plans. They started without me, and now it would appear that they're finishing. But more seriously, because of this. This was the site of the first atomic bomb used in war. And like Nagasaki, which you'll see later, it's really rather amazing that 78 years ago, I can do the maths this time, when you'll see the full video you'll understand what I meant, that 78 years ago an atomic bomb was set off about 500 meters above this very spot and destroyed a whole city. And just over there is what they call the atomic dome, and that's a building that was well, destroyed, or mostly destroyed, but parts of it still remain, and you'll see on the pictures. Unfortunately, I can't get very close because a lot of it's been closed off, or the surrounding area has been closed off, presumably because some of the G7 leaders or their spouses are visiting today. But this is just a very, very busy thoroughfare, and again, like Nagasaki, it's a thriving, bustling town, and it's amazing. And to think that 78 years ago it looked like this, and now it's just a normal town. And but for the fact that there's the Peace Park and there are these memorials, do you know, you wouldn't really have guessed that this town was completely flattened, or city was completely flattened, and because of that has gone down in history as the site of the first atomic bomb. Hopefully here in Nagasaki will be the only two that are ever used. Hopefully no other presidents, prime ministers, leaders of any kind will have to go through the same kind of thought process that Harry Truman went through originally, to set off or to order the release of the nuclear bombs, and that President Roosevelt and Churchill went through a year before to actually come up with the target list. You know, on this little break from reality, I've been to a few sites that have commemorated various wars and whatnot, and do you know, the conclusion is war is poo, which I know is a real cliche, but it really is. There's got to be a better solution. Anyway, enough for me, because a lot more tourists are arriving. And welcome back to Rupy's Break from Reality, where you find me still in Hiroshima, and now on the Io Bridge, which is a T-shaped bridge in the centre of Hiroshima, about 300-400 meters from the hypercentre. So the hypercentre is about 200-300 meters over there, and the bomb actually went off 580 meters above us. And this bridge was actually the original target, but it missed its target and hit over there, just above a hospital, as it happens. And this forms the entrance to the Peace Park. And just behind me is that building there, and that is what's called the A-bomb dome, which is a building that survived the bombing, despite being 200-300 meters away from the epicenter of the blast, I suppose. Now, the sharp-eyed viewers amongst you will notice that there's been a slight costume change, and the reason for that is because this whole area, this whole Peace Park, was closed up until this morning because of the G7 conference. So this, I think, was the site of some ceremonies. I know that some of the G7 leaders and some of the invitees were laying wreaths, etc., etc. So now that it's open, we can we can explore it properly. But it's, again, like Nagasaki, it's very, very interesting that 78 years ago, I can do the maths now, later on you'll understand what I mean, that 78 years ago, a nuclear bomb, the first ever nuclear bomb used in military combat, went off just 300-400 meters over there, as we saw, as you'll have seen earlier from the video taken at the hypercentre. And here we are 78 years later, and we can walk around. It's a thriving, bustling city with you might be able to see it, that construction site there is a brand new football stadium that's being built. But again, it's a very, very eerie place. And when you consider the thought process that President Truman went through, and President Roosevelt and Winston Churchill, about a year before the decision was actually made, or the order was actually given, to actually drop the bomb and do the calculation that killing, I think, combined between 150 and 200,000 people in 2 incidents would have saved more lives than prolonging the war. You know, we're never going to know the answer, but it does make for an interesting conversation. The problem now is that nuclear weapons are so powerful that 78 years later we're unlikely to be able to stand here and take videos or build thriving cities on the sites of, hey ho, science, eh? It's amazing. And having learned about how nuclear weapons work and nuclear energy works at school, it's really interesting when you see buildings like that that actually show you the actual effect that they can have. It's very interesting. I thoroughly recommend coming here. Japan, for so many reasons, is just an amazing place. And Hiroshima and Nagasaki, 2 cities that, but for events in 1945, maybe most people wouldn't have heard of. But now that you have heard of them, you really should come. They are amazing cities, and it's amazing to see what's become of those cities and what those cities have become in the intervening period. Human beings are amazing. They're capable of some tremendous things, both good and bad. And this area and Nagasaki is a testament to things that have been done in the name of terror and in the name of wonder. It's well worth coming. And welcome back to Rupy's Break from Reality. I'm standing in one of the most remarkable places I've ever stood, actually. This black monolith behind me marks the spot on the ground where the atomic bomb in Nagasaki went off. It actually went off about 500 meters above this very spot. The second nuclear weapon to be fired in war. To date, the last, hopefully, the last ever. But, you know, let's not get into politics too much right now. But it was the bomb that ended the Second World War, led to the Japanese surrender, killed 75,000 people, injured another 75,000 in Nagasaki. It's remarkable. I've just come from the Atomic Bomb Museum, which it gives some history of the events surrounding it. And in fairness, the Japanese haven't shied away from the fact that they were at war at the time. But it's very odd to be standing here and having learnt about it at school, about nuclear fallouts and all the rest of it, and irradiation, and areas would be uninhabitable for generations, and here we are 75 odd years later, and I'm here, and it's a thriving city, it's a beautiful city. Nagasaki is just great. I've done the frivolous bit today. I've been to Hiroshima Island, or Battleship Island as it's known, which was a James Bond location, and now I've come to the location that actually put Nagasaki on the map, for reasonably unfortunate reasons. But the arguments for and against nuclear weapons, you know, we can argue that or discuss that at a different time. Would more people have been lost if the war had continued without the use of nuclear weapons? Who knows? The interesting thing is that 75 odd years ago, actually let's do the maths, 78 years ago, no? Oh, I can't do the maths, 70 odd years ago, Harry Truman did that calculus. Actually, it was done a year earlier by Roosevelt. Churchill, as it turns out. Is it worth losing or killing X thousand people in one go, literally in one go, or have the war prolonged for a period of time and losing a different number? Which number would be higher? Which number would be the more acceptable loss? I'm glad I don't need to make those kind of decisions. But this is a remarkable place, both historically, but it's even more remarkable now when you look at what Nagasaki has become. Amazing, absolutely amazing. I'm so glad I came.